Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Silverchair Universe Presents Cadmore Media, which is part of the Silverchair Universe webinar series. My name is Stephanie Lovegrove Hansen, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager at Silverchair. We are very excited to have with us today Violaine from Cadmore, the co-founder and CEO. She's going to walk us through the product, look at some of the fun things they've been doing, especially lately, and then we'll have some opportunities for Q&A at the end of this session. Before we get started, just a few notes. All attendees have been muted, and if you have questions during the webinar, please just type them into the Q&A box, and we'll address those either as we go or at the end of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded, and a link will be sent to you afterwards. We also have a brief survey that you'll receive after the webinar. If you have a moment to fill that out, it'd be very helpful. All right, and so I think with that, I will pass it over to you, Violaine.
So we're going to describe today what Cadmore does and what the opportunities are to integrate Cadmore with the Silverchair platform. So we're very happy to be able to present both what we have set out to do in the past couple of years. We've been in existence for 2 years, and what we are also doing lately, which I have to say has changed directions a little bit, or focus at least. So we're going to try to address both things. So the first thing I wanted to do was to talk about what Cadmore is and who we are. And the reason for this is that we want to add a little context around the technology that we've built and the services that we offer. So I am the CEO and co-founder of Cadmore Media. This is a company that I think I've had in my mind for a very long time. It has been in real existence for 2 years. As I said, we're about to celebrate our 2nd anniversary next month. The product concept, though, and the technology behind it is something that we've been thinking about for a very long time. So my background is in academic publishing. It's in publishing generally. I used to be in trade publishing before I was in academic publishing. So I worked for a company for publishers in France, in New York, at Random House, before moving on to academic publishing with Sage Publishing. So I spent a few years there working mostly on technology on their platforms, and I spent quite a bit of time working on the Sage video product that they built a few years ago. So I was the technology lead for that. And after that, I worked for a small company, a small technology provider that was also building platforms, and that had a lot of expertise and technology around video as well. So that's the context in which we decided to create this company. I've been working with Simon for a few years. So Simon Inger is our co-founder. He is most known as a consultant. He's been working in the journals space for a very long time, and specifically with societies. So he has a very deep knowledge of societies, and he's got a lot of experience working with many different types of societies, big ones, small ones, in all kinds of subject spaces. So it's been really helpful for us to work together. So me more as the product and technology hat, and him more as the strategy hat for societies generally. It's been really helpful to work together to create this company. So what we also have other people on staff, as well as another co-founder who is our CTO and builds all of this behind the scenes. So what we have set out to do is build a video streaming solution that is designed for publishers and for scholarly publishing. The idea being is that there is video everywhere in the world right now. There's video is being produced by societies, but generally the societies and publishers, academic publishers, have been using mass market tools to publish videos, and they don't necessarily use tools that are specifically for them, like they would, for example, for journals and for books. And oftentimes videos are posted on YouTube or on Vimeo. They're just treated like supplementary material that is not really integrated with the rest of the content that they publish. And part of this, I think, is a lack of embrace generally by the industry of video content, where video content is not treated with the same care as you would journal articles or books. But at the same time, it's not just a lack of will, it's also that the infrastructure is not necessarily there for publishers and societies to be able to do this right. So we've set out to do this. To be honest, we're doing both. We're doing both leadership, and we're both evangelists for video in this space generally. And also we provide technology and services to help people actually achieve those goals that they may have. So what are we? So we are the first training platform that is really dedicated to academic professional organizations. And that's a bit of word soup there, but you can see some words that stand out. The focus that we have is really around the same buzzwords that you would have for journal content. So it's going to be discoverability and accessibility and searchability, persistent identifiers, all kinds of things that really make scholarly content, that really make the backbone of the scholarly content infrastructure. We want to apply that to video as well. We've won a few things already. We won a grant from Digital Science. We won the NFA Startup Challenge. So I think we got a lot more visibility in the past year or so. And now we're really delighted to have joined the Silverchair Universe to be able to offer our services in conjunction with the Silverchair Platform. So when I talk about video, I actually mean different things. So I am the co-chair of a NISO working group that is looking at video and audio standards for scholarly communications. It's not going to be a new standard that we're working on, but it's going to be instead recommended guidelines that look at the existing standards and then give recommendations on how to use them. So I've been working on that for a little under a year, and I believe the same conclusion I have every meeting is that video is not a content type. Video is a format that can exist within many different content types. So the use cases that we cover, even though video is the commonality between all these use cases, the use cases are actually quite varied. The one that I'm probably going to talk about the most today is conference recordings, mostly because they're just every conference has moved online, as therefore every conference is video these days. So, we also support videos that are used for teaching and learnings and academic collections that is sold as product into libraries. In some cases, the content is used for continual product development, continual professional development, or continual medical education. You've got lectures as well that are recorded, webinars like this one, but also supplementary materials. So supplementary materials that could be, for example, that could be research material that is associated with an article. So what do you do with those? Or it could be a journal that's actually a video journal. So a journal that is made of video articles. The most well-known example of those is going to be Jove, but you do have others that have launched video journals. And I'm thinking of, in particular, disciplines like surgery, where video just makes sense because it's much easier to convey new technique by filming it than it is by describing it in an article. Some cases the videos are used for marketing. In some cases it's primary sources as well. So whether that's archives from a long time ago, or whether it's actually when content is actually the primary research material, those are really interesting as well because they present real discovery challenges. And then our technology can also be applied to podcasts as well. So what it is that we offer a few things. The core of our technology is in video hosting and streaming. So we partner with Microsoft for this. We don't have our own CDNs around the world, our own CDN and our own network around the world. What we have is we just leverage the infrastructure of the Azure environment. So we do provide hosting services as well as the digital asset management system. So we're the place where you can upload your videos, assign metadata to them, and publish them in many different places where they can be streamed. So the key, there are a few differentiators between us and then your traditional hosting, video hosting platform. One of them is our player, which I'm going to show, which is really geared for researchers, and it's really the best tool that you can find for long-form content specifically. So anytime you've got a lecture that's over 10 minutes, and especially if it's not necessarily very well produced, so it's a PowerPoint with audio and it's not very engaging, then we have a player that makes that a lot more interesting to watch and a lot more efficient to watch. So that's the player is agnostic, is platform agnostic, so it can be embedded onto any platform. And that's why, for example, we're working with Silverchair, is because they can leverage our video hosting and player on their own platform, which makes for a unified user experience, even though the technologies that run the platform itself and the video may be different. The other thing that really separates out from other video platforms is that we provide workflow tools to create the metadata that goes with the videos. And that's something that I can talk about a little bit later. So that's one thing. For those who either do not have a platform or want to create a product that is really based around video, or who may not have a primary home for conference recordings, for example, we also host media libraries. So in that case, we actually host the entire website, and our player is embedded on it, is built into it. So you've got extra search capabilities, you've got great SEO, searchability, and all of this is really built into these simple websites that are built around the video content. And then the third thing that we provide is integrations, because we understand that our technology does not live in a vacuum. We also have professional services to integrate with basically every single system in the different workflows that we fit in. So it could be, for example, an abstract management system, a manuscript submission system, a peer review system, a publishing platform. It could be a CMS that has that is the repository for content that the videos are related to. It could be a preservation tool. So there are many different ways in which we can integrate with other systems. And so our capabilities go beyond just the video hosting, as we actually build solutions that fit, that cover wider workflows. So I'm going to go through benefits. I'm going to kind of rattle through them, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course, to give more information about this to anyone who might be interested in hearing. So the two things really that I was talking about were the enhanced streaming experience and then the end-to-end workflow. Those are the two backbones of why we're special. So the user experience is that player that I was talking about. I'll show it to you later, so I don't have to go back and forth between the PowerPoint and the websites, but I've got a few things to show. This user experience is all built around fast navigation for all of this long-form content. It's got a synchronized transcript. So transcripts are really important to surface the content, to unlock the content that's locked into videos. It's platform agnostic, so it can be embedded onto a Silverchair website, onto an LMS, onto another website, and the same piece of content can be embedded into different places. So I'll stop here and give an example, but if you do have a conference recording, you could decide that you're going to have the videos on an event website that is going to be live for a limited time, for example, and that's going to have some live components to it. But at the same time, you may also want to have that conference recording indexed onto your publishing platform alongside a proceeding. So you may want to actually embed the recording alongside the proceeding. So in that case, We provide, the backend is the same. The video is stored once online in the cloud, but it can be embedded in different places. So the fact that we're platform agnostic means that we're portable. We don't just have one solution that you're boxed in. Enhanced discoverability is something that we really care very deeply about, is that oftentimes videos are online, but they're hard to find. They're hard to find because they're not fully transcribed. So thankfully that's starting to change, and there is some automated solution to transcribe the video content that is making them more searchable. But oftentimes the metadata is not there. So we focus on metadata and making sure that that metadata is available to both Google so that the videos can be crawled if they're available on the open web, but also so that metadata can be packaged in a way that it can easily be indexed by discovery services, library catalogs, etc. So discoverability means both open web discoverability and SEO, but also discoverability within your traditional library discovery environments. Accessibility is something that we care very, very deeply about. We have made a huge effort to make our player accessible. There's always work to be done, but we're keeping track with the guidelines, and we're trying to make videos not only accessible but also usable by people with disabilities. So that means actually being creative and not just following the official guidelines, but making sure there's enough descriptive content, for example, in our player to make sure that the content can be is navigable by people with disabilities. The side note that I will add to that is that making video content accessible actually makes it more accessible to everybody when it comes to video. So this is not just for people with disabilities. I'm sure you've heard that before. You've heard that said before for books and for journals. So for text-based content, for video, that's even more true, because for a non-native speaker, for example, I'm not an English native speaker. I say that all the time. I've got closed captions on all the time when I'm watching something. It's just more difficult to understand somebody who's speaking than it is to read text. It's just more difficult. The reverse can be true also. You could have a speaker who has a strong accent, in which case they're difficult to understand. So having their content transcribed, which is necessary to make the content accessible, also means that it's going to be more accessible to everybody who might have trouble understanding the audio. So, and then the things that you need to make your content accessible also ensure that your content is going to be more discoverable as well. It's pretty much the same things that you're going to need. It's going to be the transcripts, the metadata. So the second pillar of what we provide is an end-to-end workflow. So secure integrated architecture for all your content. We've got different ways, different security levels. We could have the content that lives within our platform obviously is secure, but then what sits out there on the web, you can have cases in which it's open to everybody. You can have cases in which there's light security with just a simple username and password approach to mechanism to access the content, or we can have very secure environments as well, which we do have for content that's more confidential. So we do have a content enrichment workflow, meaning that we don't just give you the video and the end result and say, you get there, however you can do that. What I've discovered working with video in an academic context over all these years is that the tools out there are not geared towards metadata and the creation of transcripts. So all of the tools that we have, they really are there to help you have a very simple workflow that help you achieve the same results that companies like Jove and Alexander Street Press, for those who are familiar with them, it helps you achieve the same results, but with built-in infrastructure that's very easy to use. And then we also have partners who can help with the metadata creation, the transcriptions, the video editing if necessary. So we actually have partners who can help throughout the workflow. We can deliver content, so not only can we ingest content, but we can also deliver metadata and videos to other platforms. So we're the place where the videos are live, but in some cases there might be a feed that needs to be sent to a discovery service for that content to be indexed, and we can help with that too. That includes DOIs, so we can register DOIs for videos. We can register them on your behalf if you have a relationship with Crossref already, or we can do that ourselves if it's a standalone product that doesn't live with any other one. But DOI support is core. We've got analytics for that really measure everything that people do with the video, so you can see exactly where they were, how long they've watched, if they clicked on transcript, on buttons, etc. So you can do all of that. And then we've got those professional services that I was mentioning. So just very briefly, how we're different from other technology, video technology platforms. So I call them in this kind of 3 categories, which are really a generalization. Is a bit more complicated than that. But overall, so you've got YouTube, which is what people associate with video. YouTube is great for open web discovery. It is not a repository. It's a social, it's basically social media that takes your content and then puts ads on it and kind of owns your content once it's on there. So it's both a very important discovery channel, but it's not a good primary repository. And then you have what I call the classic platforms, which are great. They've got amazing technology. We look at them all the time and make sure we look at their features and where they're going, because it's really interesting to see what's happening in the wider world. That being said, they're not really focused on academic and research content. So they focus on things like building the next Netflix, and they focused on big marketing campaigns that involves tons of videos that are churned out, very well produced and churned out every day. That is not exactly what societies are doing at the moment. So our platform has just a different focus. It's focused on accessibility, discoverability, metadata, industry-focused analytics. So for example, we can produce counter 5 data. That's not something that your typical platform is going to be able to do. I do have another slide about accessibility. As I said, it's very important to us. So I'm just going to describe what you need to make your video content accessible. And then I have a whole article that I published in Learn Publishing a couple years ago that describes why you should do it. So you need text alternatives for the content. So closed captions, transcripts, in some cases, audio descriptions. Those are not as common, but they're becoming more common for certain types of content. The player itself needs to be screen reader compatible. It needs to be keyboard accessible, and you also need to think about all the colors and make sure that the text and the contrasts work, follow the guidelines. Another quick word about the content services partnerships that we have. So we have a few of them that have been publicized already. We work with Cactus Communications, for example, for certain services. We also work with Ripley Media for transcriptions. They're a very well-known transcription service that a lot of societies and academic publishers use because they can produce quality transcripts. The other bit that I haven't really touched on is translations. We can also produce translations for the content, and that goes for both the transcripts and the metadata. To us, that's really important because a large benefit of having videos online means that you can increase your audience. That's especially true for meetings, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. It's also true for meetings because what the virtualization of meetings is doing, with all the grief that all of us are going through, it is opening up content, access to content to people around the world. So once the hurdles that we're going through and the shock is over, I think societies are going to realize that they have acquired expertise and technology that is going to be key in the future to ensure global access. Transcriptions and translations, that's really part of that. Making content available in languages other than English just expands your reach considerably. I wanted to talk about meetings, but before I do that, I'm going to jump into a little bit of a demo. And so I'm going to try to have, is not the right one. There you go. So I wanted to show you a few things. So this happens to be, so because we're partners with Silverchair, we're hosting on their behalf the content from Platform Strategies. So that's both the 2018 content and the 2019 content, and I encourage you all to take a look at it. Really not just for the website, but the actual content was great. Had a great time at that conference. So this is a website that we host. This is a media library, but I wanted to show you a few things. I wanted to, first of all, show what having metadata and transcripts mean, what it can do for your content discoverability, your video discoverability. So in this case, I just searched for strategy and I surfaced a few sessions, but not only the ones that had strategy in the title, but actually the ones where the word strategy was mentioned. And so in this case, Will Schweitzer talked about strategy, and I kind of want to see what he was talking about. I can click on that link and I get to the video, which is queued at that point. And I can see where his comment fit within the larger transcript. So this entire black rectangular square is our player. As I said, in this case, it's on the media library that we host, but this is a portable player. So that means it can be embedded onto a Silverchair website as well. So if I click on here, I'm just going to mute Will really quickly. I can see that the transcript is synchronized with the video itself, which just makes it easier to follow, but it also makes it easier to see the bits that you're interested in. It can be exported. The transcript can be indexed by Google. It can be used in any index really that uses full text search. So alongside the transcript, you could create things like chapters on your videos. The player has a number of tools that make it easier to engage with the video, share it, bookmark it, embed it, download the video or the transcript depending on the setting. You could cite the video, and you also have different ways of navigating it. So the player itself is something that we've made really both usable, focused on long form content, but also flexible so that it can fit in any design. I'm going to show this real quick. So we have many different ways of embedding this player. The view that I showed before was kind of what we call the wide view, which is something that's going to take most of your screen. But we also have ways to embed the content in smaller spaces when video is, for example, not the main element of the page, but when it's just embedded on a page in line with the content. So that's still fold width. You can have it vertical. You can have it so it doesn't have a transcript. Obviously, in some cases, you may not have one done. This one is a picture pop-up, so it's just a picture. If you click on it, it's going to open it in your browser. This shows you that you can have any types of color customizations and background customizations that you want. And in some cases, you may want the transcript hidden by default, but you still want it to be accessible. So that's a nice way to have content embedded. So really different ways to have this player. I'll show you just a couple more examples. This is an example of a website that we do not host. So this is actually a WordPress site that our player was embedded on. And this is an example from also the Future Science group of a website that embeds our player. And in this case, the transcript is not visible by default, but it's visible when you click on full screen. So the other thing, so all of this is what we had built before. And what we've discovered, we were already working with conference recordings before. So our focus was really on the on-demand content. So the on-demand experience for an event. There are very few societies that are actually doing this already. The main societies that were already, before the latest COVID crisis, some societies were already capturing content that was happening at what they called live event. I like to call them physical events because now live event can also be online. But so they were capturing the content on site and then packaging the recordings into products that could be either sold separately. So those were generally medical societies, I would say, because the content can be used with CME. But in other cases, it could be the content is integrated with the proceedings on the publishing platform alongside journal content as well. So those were the two main use cases, the medical one being vastly more common than any other content. So we had been focused on this. We're actually in the middle of writing a white paper on the topic, on the value of conference recordings. So what you can do to prolong the life of your event by reusing the content afterwards. So we've been doing a white paper, we've been interviewing societies about what they had been doing. This has become hugely interesting right now. It's a really moving target because everybody now has video from their conferences because everybody's moving online. So, so that white paper has changed. It also has, as like everybody else, we're adapting. So one thing we've thought about is, okay, so we have the best on-demand experience for events. What can we do to help create events around this on-demand content? And most importantly, what can we do to help societies manage, put events online that may have 1,000 sessions and 50 concurrent sessions, for example? What can we do to do that? So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here and show you what we've done. Oh, this is, I just clicked from the start. That's okay. I'll just whiz through it. This is when you wish you didn't have animations. There you go. Just one back. That's the last one. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today, and that's kind of the latest development that we've done. So the idea is these conferences that are going online, they're looking at former practices, best practices for doing virtual events. One of the challenges with that is that nobody's really tried to do a fully online event that is of the scope of some of the events that societies put together, where you have 1,500 papers, for example. You can't have 1,500 webinars. It's just not practical. So you need to think about other ways to create a great on-demand, a great experience online. You need to still publish the content. You can't just let that content go, because speakers need to present their research, their presentations. They can't just publish the paper on a publishing platform. That's just not enough. Otherwise, it's not a presentation anymore. So you need to both preserve the scope of the content, but at the same time, you need to keep that manageable. And nobody is able to create this many live events in so little time. So what we've done is we've created a mix of both on-demand content, meaning that the content is pre-recorded. It's fairly easy for people to pre-record their presentations using PowerPoint or Keynote, Camtasia. There's a number of tools to do that. We also have services that can help speakers do that when they're not able to pre-record their content, their presentation. So they can pre-record. There are many advantages for pre-recording presentations. I was just chatting with Stephanie about potentially doing this with some of the Silverchair webinars. There are many ways, in many ways, pre-recording the content just takes the risk off of the equation because it allows you not to have to run 1,000 events live. You can just record the content on your own time. So once you've pre-recorded the content, what you need is a bit of interaction with the content. So we believe that the best way to interact with people online is through chats. That is not going to preclude the need for breakout sessions and other types of interactions, but we think that chat has something that's really unique to it online, because for a number of reasons, it's a bit more democratic than your typical Q&A, where you're at a session and you need to stand out and ask a question in front of everybody. It can be a little intimidating. That's not the case on chat. So it has this kind of leveling effect. It's much easier to all ask a question at the same time and just interact with your fellow attendees or speakers. So we've attached chat functionality to the on-demand content. So you keep the on-demand content, you have the transcript, it's easy to follow, but it's queued at the same time for everyone, and everybody discusses the presentation at the same time, including through a Q&A with the speaker, who, because the content is pre-recorded, can actually be there the entire time to answer questions. So we're launching this. It's new. It's going to be on our media libraries, but also can be portable. So that's something that we can also work to embed on your own websites. We're working on other ways to do clever events, online events around video online. So we'll probably have more to present soon. But I wanted to show this one because this is kind of the product of rapid thinking and adapting to the current situation. So I think I can stop sharing my screen. I believe I'm at the end of my presentation, and I'm going to leave the floor to Stephanie, who I believe may have a couple questions.
Yes, wonderful. And we actually got one in the chat too, so we can read that as well. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you showed the strategies site, because I wanted to add a couple things to that. We've found that amazingly useful. We've also embedded some of the videos directly on our website. It was very easy to do. There are the different embed options. I think we ended up with the one where it kind of pops up. But also the transcripts, the use cases for the transcripts are many. So for example, it makes it more easy to excerpt content from that for things like blog posts, white papers, marketing materials. So it's so much easier to have all that in text form too, so that then you get kind of a longer use out of all of that content in a variety of forms too. And so you had done one of the screenshots was of the Society Street meeting, and the question we got through the Q&A is, I was an attendee of the recent Society Street meeting, and I saw the recent email about some lessons learned on how that went. Care to offer some more in-depth thoughts on how virtual meetings should develop and improve in our current situation? You touched on this a little bit, but.
Yeah, sure. So that one's easy because I was a panelist on Society Street as well. And of course, the society's the conference is organized by our co-founder Simon Enger, so lots of connections there. So yes, that one was very interesting because we put it together in a week. I think decided to go virtual. We decided to do it mostly because we didn't want to just cancel. It was something that felt wrong. At the same time, we didn't have as much time to think about innovative ways to do it, I think, as we could have. So the way that Society was ran was through a series of webinars. So it was basically 5 webinars. I think my biggest takeaway from that was that the chat box was on fire. It was really fun to be there with everybody else. And I thought it was quite interesting to see how you can create interaction like that. This is partially the kind of the inspiration for the work, for the new features that we're building, is that we realize, okay, there are actually many ways in which you can engage online. You can have an engaged event online, but you just have to be creative. So having a series of webinars is not the answer for a large event. Trying to recreate the physical experience is not necessarily the right move too. So there are some platforms out there that have like 3D exhibit halls, for example. Those are kind of interesting visually, but at the same time, is that really the experience that an attendee would want to have? So I think being creative about the ways in which people can interact is, and leveraging the powers of the internet, the fact that content can be asynchronous online. It doesn't have to be live. It doesn't have to be all at the same time. Those are going to be the interesting changes I think that we're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and lots of virtual events coming up, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it kind of evolves as time goes on.
Yeah, everybody's doing something different, aren't they? It's like we've been talking to many societies, and everybody's got a different plan and different priorities. I would say one other thing is that your virtual events are going to have 4 different types of stakeholders. It's going to be the attendees, it's going to be the speakers, it's going to be the sponsors, it's going to be the conference organizer. Mm-hmm. And you have to weigh in your priorities there, I think. And in some cases, we're seeing a bit of emphasis on the sponsors, which is understandable because they're the ones holding the events together, and you want to make sure that they're happy because there's so much that's going on right now, so much revenue loss that it's obviously a concern. But at the same time, you have to make sure that the attendees value your events, and you have to stay relevant. That's another thing, is you're seeing so many ad hoc virtual events that are put together even by researchers themselves, that you want to make sure that the event organizers adapt quickly enough that they stay relevant after this crisis is over.
Yeah, and one benefit, just from my perspective as a sponsor of a lot of these meetings, with Silverchair, we've been in conversation with a lot of these organizers. And one thing is, because the artifacts exist beyond, it can be revisited later. In some ways is additional exposure for your brand when there's like a slide or whatever, kind of in there with the sponsor information, something that goes beyond just the moment in time that the conference happens, which is how it typically kind of goes.
Yeah, and you get more data. You actually know who is there. And for sponsors, I think the goal should be really, I just had this discussion. So the goal should really be for sponsors to have the same kind of interaction that you have at a conference. As I'm a sponsor myself, as you are, right? Where I'm an exhibitor myself, and the conferences that I find the most successful are the ones where I'm an attendee like everybody else, and I can network and I can share ideas. And yes, people know that I'm there as an exhibitor, but at the same time, I participate in the discussion. And so I think that if you think about the value for sponsors, you have to think in the same way that you're thinking about the value for attendees. So how can the sponsors interact with the attendees, not in a separate sponsor room, but actually in sessions where the content is being discussed? Can they be moderators for some sessions? Can they have sponsored sessions that they pay for, but at the same time that provide engaging content like you would have at SSP, right? You can do that online. Nobody's preventing you from doing that. So it's not trying to recreate a fake booth online, but actually what the changes that you're making for your attendees, you should probably try to make them for your sponsors as well. So that part is going to be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we don't have any other questions at the moment. If anyone has any, feel free to type those in. But otherwise, I feel like we've covered quite a range. Thank you so much for the demo. And if anyone does have questions later, you can either email Violaine directly or universe@silverchair.com. We'll be happy to kind of connect you and get you the answer that you need. And if you do have questions about integrations, you can reach out to the same people or your PDM if you're a Silverchair client, and we can kind of get those conversations started. Meanwhile, I'm so glad everyone was able to join us. Thank you. And we hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you, Violaine, so much. Hope you're hanging in there.
Yeah, doing okay. It's starting to get really sunny, so it's that time of day when I'm inundated with light. Glad to...
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Bye.